I have a legitimate question. Legitimate question. I have
The light force of your bond, a power like light itself, unseen for generations, a dyad in the force.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of DYAD in the Force, episode 208. Lots to talk about on today's episode. Just a whirlwind of
It's been a week.
Things happening this week. Of course, we are going to be talking about it today. We're going to be talking about Kathleen Kennedy. Hashtag no she ain't. We're going to be talking about
Retire
the Andor Season 2 trailer that dropped this week as well. And you know, the interview that Kathleen Kennedy gave with Deadline had some juicy tidbits on it as well. When it came to talking about Mandalorian and Grogu and Sean Levy's movie with Ryan Gosling in it. So there's some juicy details to talk about here, there, everywhere, all at once, at the same time. Shout out to Michelle Yao. I'm done. Choco, what's going on?
Michelle, yeah. Sorry, I was just, you know what we gotta do? We gotta watch Super Cop 3 because she's delightful in it.
I mean, I would love to watch all of the Super Cops.
Yes. And her stunts are insane. She's like the only person that could keep up with Jackie Chan, especially when you watch her fall off of a moving bus. It's just, yeah, it's crazy. And then roll off of a car. Like, she really did that. Anyways, I'm doing good. I was sick. I had the flu last week. But I finally have recouped and I'm back at it. And yeah, there's just been it's been a fun time to be a fan. We'll just say that.
Absolutely. For sure. Shout out to Cal4 in the chat saying first and then Ryan Johnson emote. I always forget we have those emotes. They're fun, some fun emotes. We have some George Lucas ones too if you guys want to use those as well. Let's see what's going on. Lord Goob has a George Lucas emote. Right on time. Let's go on to the news, and then we will discuss the news, because it goes hand in hand with today's subject. Usually we have some news to talk about, and then we have a main subject. But the main subject is this week's news. So, shout out to Kenny in the chat.
Hey, Kenny.
We'll just go ahead and say the headlines. Essentially, well, the Andor Season 2 trailer dropped. We're going to be talking about that, the details that we saw. The headline was that Kathleen Kennedy, according to a report by someone named Puck, Baloney Puck, was supposedly going to retire at the end of this year. All of the publications picked it up. I believe Variety and CNN provided counter sources saying that that was false, but nonetheless, the Chuds ran with it, saying we are free now.
It still boggles my mind how few people actually know what her job is, or like, okay, if you don't like a movie, that's awesome, that's cool, that's great, right? But like, it doesn't mean her job is not creative.
There's some
has a
input
role
in
that's
there, but
90.
yes, not
Her
primarily
role is
creative.
90% administrative, and administrate she has. And if you love Dave Filoni, you love that Dave Filoni has had the keys to the kingdom tossed at him, right? How many projects is that guy have his hand in at any given moment? Like a lot more than any other person in the industry. That's the decision made by Kathleen. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, Kathleen Kennedy has. Listen, like
She's
I
his biggest fan.
Yeah, I released some videos trying to debunk it because the day one of the report had Variety saying that they had a source saying it was unfounded, baseless, and untrue. So everyone was running with it. I made a video clarifying using that source from Variety, and CNN also had another source, probably the same source. I had someone saying she is objectively terrible at her job, and I made some responses, but I don't know what reality you have to live in to look at someone who has, all the way in the 80s, co-founded Amblin with Steven Spielberg, EP'd on E.T., EP'd on Jurassic Park, EP'd on Back to the Future, the entire franchise, EP'd on Sixth Sense. Now, yeah, she's a movie producer, like through and through. She's produced hundreds of movies. You're going to have some misses in there. But if you look at the grand picture, the big picture of her resume, she has a stellar portfolio. And I don't know anyone that can look at all of the movies she's either produced or executive produced and say she's done a poor job. And if you look at her job under Lucasfilm, if you're arguing she's done a poor job under Lucasfilm, we have two movies that are above 80% user score, two movies that are above 80% on critical score, which is odd. I don't know how The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker flipped, but it is what it is. And then you take a look at all of the TV shows that she's EP'd. It's largely positive, you know. Granted, there's like, you know, The Acolyte, but that was review bombed. Even the other shows and movies named The Acolytes got hit. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Book of Boba Fett. There's only a couple here and there, but again, you're not gonna get all hits. Even Kevin Feige suffers from misses sometimes.
Well, I mean, I'll just say, you know, I enjoyed, I enjoy Rogue One now. I didn't at first, right?
Yeah.
I enjoy The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, you know, like I said, Rogue One, Andor, Clone Wars Season 6 and 7 came out under Disney, Star Wars Rebels came out under Disney, The Bad Batch, The Mandalorian, you know, Ahsoka, Tales of the Jedi, and a whole slew of stuff that's actually that's good. And like, even if you don't like some things, undeniably there are a bunch of hits in here. And also, if the president, if your company gets a new president, and then your company's value, like the value of the IP, goes times 10, they are objectively successful at that job as president. There's really no way to argue that. Now, I know I had people be like, oh, but just because it was financially successful doesn't mean that the quality was good. Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about her role as president. If you don't like how something was written, you don't like the performances, whatever, then you don't like the director or the actor or the writer or whatever. But like, some of these things are undeniable, and I don't know what's wrong with these people.
Yeah, I mean, these are the same people that confuse subjective with objective time and time again ad nauseum. You know, so a good example of this, or at least what I think is a good example of this, is objectively, Nobuhiro Watsuki did create a juggernaut of an anime in Rurouni Kenshin. Objectively, he's a piece of shit. So, like, two things can be true at the same time. Like, Kathleen Kennedy can be a stellar producer and have an amazing portfolio, and at the same time, you can not like what she's done. That's perfectly fine. That's your opinion. That's subjective. But to say that she's objectively done a poor job when most of what she has done has been a critical success and even a financial success. And then if you go back even further towards the 80s when she first started to now, it's even more of a success. You know? And so that stuff is besides the point of whether you like the projects or not. You know?
And that's a problem. A lot of people can't separate I don't like this with this is bad.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think the sequels are the worst trilogy amongst the three. Now, I still enjoy them. I love The Last Jedi. I'm very in the middle on The Force Awakens. I'm not a big fan of Rise of Skywalker. Overall, I like the prequels more. Now, I think the prequels are worse movies from a filmmaking standpoint. But I like them. Leave me alone.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I love it when we try to speak in good faith and they call us sequel lovers, but we love the prequels too. We love the original. We love all of Star Wars, man. And if we want to go back to their like Rotten Tomatoes kind of aggregate like source of quality, the prequels are like sub 70% user rating. All three. And if we go by the scores, the sequels did better.
That's why it was just really funny when The Acolyte came out and it was like massively attacked before the show even came out. People were like, well, look at the Rotten Tomatoes score. And then you're like, okay, so you're saying Rise of Skywalker, which is like 86, is way better than Revenge of the Sith, which is at 66, which, by the way, it probably is supposed to be higher, but there's a bunch of bots that will specifically upvote or downvote it to keep it at 66 because of Order 66. But like, anyways, that's whatever. The internet is not a place for nuance. Apparently, I like waffles, which apparently means I hate pancakes. I don't know how these people work.
I'm a dog person, so I hate cats.
Of course.
Harith says, like, also goes to show people don't read articles. They look at the title and try to bend it for engagement instead of reporting what's actually happening. This has been the case for the last 6 years that we've been content creators. It's always about the headline. And sometimes it's not even about the headline. They read the article and, like, either purposefully or genuinely get it wrong. You know, I go back
straight up. David Beckham can't bend it like that. Like Mr. Fantastic, they'll give him a run for his money. It's insane.
I know I don't hate cats, Spooky. I've got a stray cat in our garden that we just kind of chills. You know, I'm ambivalent towards it because it's not really my cat, but you know, likes me. But I go back to like the Daisy Ridley comment where she says, you know, I can't change how some men view women, and they read that, and that's an exact quote, and said all men and calling all fans misogynist. So
God, I just remember because Star Wars Theory's video on it was it was Daisy Ridley has meltdown, blames men, like it's men's fault or something like that, and you're like, are you kidding me?
there was also another content creator, I forget what her name is. It's like J something, where she read the quote verbatim, and I say verbatim like to emphasize how exact she read the quote, and then after that she said, which means, you know, all the white dudes and everybody here watching this video, like, no, that's not what it means. It means some men. Like, they do this all the time, you know, and we just got to be vigilant. We gotta stay on our toes.
Some people like cake. You mean all people like cake? Not all people like cake. You know, like that's literally, that's what I said. God damn it.
Harris says, I love how the interviewer kept asking, why do people hate you in different ways? And she kept being like, I don't know. Other producers' presents don't get scrutinized. I honestly, you know what?
That article was kind of funny. Because you're like, oh, so you have to come back, right? She's like, no, I don't have to come back. I want to come back. Okay, but you're under contract to come back, though, right? Like, no, I'm not under contract to come back. Okay, but what? Yeah, that was a really funny article.
Yeah, and one of the questions was, do you have any explanation for like the chaos? Like, why is there so much chaos? She's like, there's no chaos. We're all in lockstep with each other. We talk about this all the time, Bob and Ellen and I, and you know, we're looking at like a short list of bench players that can come in. Nothing is in chaos, and it's direct, and it's in direct contradiction to what they've been purporting all these years. Oh, Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy are feuding. Kathleen Kennedy is mad at Filoni. Like,
there's a war at Lucasfilm.
Exactly.
Also, shout out to Data Entertain, our good friend Charles. You want to come on sometime, some Friday? Hell, next Friday. Let me know.
Let's see here. Kenny says, the moment I read it, I knew it was wrong. Yeah, you know, it did have some credence coming from, you know, Variety, Deadline, and stuff like that. But again, if you do your due diligence and read in the articles, you know, it's a rumor. It's someone that is leaking information that they purportedly have. But at the same time, some of the publications had counter sources. So yes, it is a rumor, and there is validity to reporting on a rumor, but you have to report on all of the facts, including the fact that they have a counter source.
Not only that, I mean, I didn't
even take classes on journalism.
Everyone was talking about it, and so I joined the conversation. I wasn't following all of the articles, and then I saw her actually come out make an interview. But you know what? It doesn't surprise me that she would think about retiring. She's 72 years old. It's been quite a long time, and she has clearly been grooming Dave Filoni to have more and more responsibility within the company. But so it would make sense for her to leave at some point. But yeah, there was still no source, and that's why always check your sources.
Yeah,
that's the most important thing.
That's one of the details we're going to revisit later on during our main segment. Heir to the Empire, like literally the heir to Lucasfilm. Who should take this? Who should take the reins, basically? So think about your guys' answers to that. I know there's some defaults to Dave Filoni, but I truly and unequivocally want him to stay creative. But yeah, like, check your sources, read the article, cite both source and counter source, and keep it about the facts. Unlike the chuds who will read the headline and say, Lucasfilm forcing Kathleen Kennedy to retire. I like how she was like explicit in the answer to, was like, I'm gonna die making movies. Y'all don't even know.
The way she interviewed was so tough.
and I think that's on purpose too. Like I made an update video with the latest interview, and I put the thumbnail says they're laughing at you, because like, you guys, the chuds, the anti-fans, the carpet nuggets, you guys take the bait all the time, and it's usually purportedly a rumor or some YouTuber fabricating some kind of story. And this is, when we start talking about source loops, where a YouTuber makes something up, publication sources the YouTuber sources the freaking article that they made about the YouTubers making things up. That's the loop. And, they've been doing this forever. Just like we said, Lucasfilm is feuding with each other. They're forcing her out. And time again, they're wrong. And they were absolutely wrong this time around. I also got a comment earlier. It was like, I feel like you're gaslighting because she did say she was retiring. And I was like, you're dumb.
She's from the 70s. Yes, I'm not ritiring. Now, she did say...
She said,
yes, they are looking into succession plans. Okay, cool. That's like me writing a will and being like, oh, so you're dying? Like, no, that's not what I said. I don't know.
So, essentially, in my attempt to not gaslight, the main point of the interview was her saying, I'm not retiring this year, which is what the reports were saying, is that she was going to retire at the end of 2025. What she said was, as Choco just said, they're looking at potential people to replace her, and they will announce that in, as far out as a year from now. With that said, she's still producing Mandalorian and Grogu and Sean Levy's Ryan Gosling film, which is pretty much has her on board for the next 2 to 3 years at minimum. So they can announce her successor within a year, but she is not retiring while she has to produce these films. That's all that the clarification was. So yes, eventually, and she did say in the same interview, I'm not going to be here, obviously, forever, right? Of course she's going to retire. At some point, the Chuds are going to be correct. It's just not today, Carrie Beck is the logical choice. You know what? There's a lot of producers that are on the animated stuff, or there's even some people, administratively on the story group that could potentially do this job as well. Even the story group isn't the story group isn't wholly creative. Right, it's also administrative, keeping up with the logistics and the ins and outs of story continuity. So it'd be cool. I mean, I imagine, and we'll get into more of the discussion on the succession later on. But I imagine, since you're naming Carrie Beck, I'd like to see Matt Martin do something. But we'll see. She also spoke like a true artist, right? Till I die is such a raw and real line. Yeah, she's a producer,
To this date. To this date.
You don't get to produce as many films as she has, either produced or executive produced, if you're not in the game. You know what I mean? How some actors will just kind of dabble in directorship. They're like, oh, I'm going to direct my own movie. Like Vin Diesel. Actually,
unfortunately,
he didn't direct. He's actually the EP, right? It's James.
Yeah, he's taken over the franchise though.
I had the exact same reply about gaslighting. Are people seriously that illiterate? Yes.
Also, they just okay. So there's, how do I put this? There's some people that run off of common sense. And by common sense, that means that they don't look into definitions or information. Everything they learn is via osmosis. And a lot of times they don't know what they're talking about. So they'll say, are you gaslighting me? They don't know what gaslighting means. Yeah, it's just, I don't know.
Shout out to Zane. Thank you for the subscription. Welcome to DYAD in the Force.
Hey, Zane. Thank you. And I love that.
It's like I said in my video, until Lucasfilm finds the next president, she will be remaining until that time. Yeah, I mean, like, I'd venture to say, like, and this is there's no grounds for this at all, but this is just kind of me spitballing. I'd venture to say that one of the other stipulations in George Lucas's contract was like Kathleen Kennedy stays on until she retires. That's not true. There's no merit to that, but
Okay, so one thing we did get a definitive answer, and that definitive answer is that they will make an announcement when she decides to retire with when and who's replacing her. So we don't have to go through this ever again. If someone says, "Oh, she's retiring," we say, "Did they make the announcement? Did they announce it? Yeah, no. All right, shut up."
if Cheds learned what gaslighting meant, they'd have come to terms with the fact that gaslighting is kind of their only play. I mean, true. And also, if they learned what woke meant as well, like, I'd imagine they need to learn what terms mean in general. You know what I mean?
Again, that's why there's so many different definitions for words like woke. It's because they learned via osmosis, and they don't have actual definitions. It's just like a vague, okay, they say this is woke and that's woke and that's woke. They all have black people in there, so therefore that's what it means. And you're like, that's not what it's not ever.
They can't even they can't even tell you what DEI stands for.
God.
They'll tell you that DEI by itself means lesser qualified, which is not the case.
Which is so idiotic. Oh my god.
It really isn't the case. Like
when
you like so my brother, playing devil's advocate, said I've made DEI hires before. Like we've gone out of our way to hire people of diverse backgrounds, and they've turned out to be poor performers. And I said, you could have done that and hired a white guy and been a poor performer too. It's not exclusive to anybody that is of an ethnic origin. You can hire a white guy they can suck. You can hire a black guy they can suck. You can hire an Asian they can suck. It's not by virtue of them being a POC or ethnic in any way. That's just them sucking. So, like, when people when people say, "Oh, they're DEI hire," they are literally defaulting to the position that anyone that is diverse in nature is automatically lesser qualified, which could be further from the truth, which couldn't be further from the truth. You know,
and it's also just idiotic because, like, traditionally things have been hired using the good old boys network, right? It's people were hiring people who were similar to them, had similar backgrounds, their friends, their family members, and things like that. And people would get overlooked because they didn't meet those qualifications, despite them being highly qualified. You know, right now, black women are the most educated group in this country. But if you hire one,
shout out to Jasmine Crockett, love her.
And it's crazy. And the other thing is, I have seen some companies hire someone based off of another factor, but there's usually another reason behind it. So let's say, so I have a friend who is a major fire chief in Los Angeles. I should actually give him a call and see how he's doing. Anyways, there was a long time, there was a lot of battles with hiring women for a long time. And it's because it's a lot of men, and they like to play practical jokes or tell each other all these dirty jokes and all this stuff. And they were like, we don't want women in here because they will affect our chemistry. And I get that decision, but that means that they were passing on highly qualified women for the sake of them being women, because they wanted to do things that are offensive to do in the workplace and not have to get in trouble for it. Like, that is the purpose of it. And, like, I don't know, these people are just
essentially, I forget who said it, but I was watching like a business podcast, and they were saying DEI strengthens your company. because it just makes your hiring in your talent pool larger. It doesn't mean you're adding lesser qualified or unqualified candidates. You're just looking at more qualified candidates, right?
But by the way, another side effect of that is you are also able to attract more candidates. Again, I'll default to women. You know, sometimes if a woman goes in for an interview and sees that there's literally no women that work there, they won't join the company.
Yeah.
And you know, and same with a lot of people of color. So it also increases the, you know, the variety of thought. It increases, yeah, it just increases everything.
It just makes your company stronger, you know? Which is why it's a problem to look at DEI as default lesser qualified candidates. It really isn't. It's just more candidates that are as qualified. That's all. They don't learn anything without the hive mind beaming the info down to them. That's also another one of those things where these talking heads, these chuds, the carpet nuggets, they're doing a really good job of galvanizing their crowd. They really don't do anything else but kind of muster their hatred. And you know, a lot of these people will say that they don't get their opinions from other people, but they will literally parrot everything that the carpet nuggets will say. And they don't even realize it. Like, whenever we reply to comments saying, oh, I've heard all of this before, this sounds like a YouTube video, they're like, no, I didn't get it from a YouTube video. Sure.
Also, I mean, I think another great example would be Riot video games, right? They had a massive lawsuit because of just rampant sexism within the company. And that lawsuit was like $100 million lawsuit. And so they're like, okay, one of the problems is we don't have enough women in here. So there's problems that we don't know that exist. And they hired more, and they got way more successful.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's how we have like the show Arcane, and like there's so many more, like there's a lot of just good stuff that comes out of it. But I digress.
Yeah, so essentially, they're all wrong. Kathleen Kennedy is staying, and so now we move on to our lore segment. I think Choco has a TikTok for us to react to and to answer for this segment.
Yeah.
All right.
It is one that I've already answered to on my TikTok, but I think we should talk about it here. So, you may fire when ready. Now, for the people who are in my live, you won't see it. I'm sorry.
All right, let's see what Hawk Goblin has to say.
I have a legitimate question for an actual Star Wars nerd. No, I'm not talking if you've seen the movies and you remember them.
What's up,
I'm
Tommy?
talking if you've like read Star Wars books, okay? So I just finished the Bane series, and there is a really interesting amount of perspective on the dark side from those books that we don't get in the movies, where in the movies it's just all hate, rage, fear, all of this over and over and over. And in Bane they talk more about how the difference between the Sith and the Jedi is more like the difference between unbridled emotion and control and reason for the Jedi. And I found that extremely fascinating. This takes me to my question, which is there a way for a Sith to be driven by emotion that isn't rooted in hate, fear, or rage? Like, can you have a Sith who is just manic, and they're still doing, you know, hateful, you know, raging things, of course, but can you have a Sith who is driven by the joy, the unbridled mania, instead of hate and revenge and all of that? I find that like really fascinating, but I also don't necessarily know enough to know if I'm missing some major plot point for how being a Sith works. So that's why I want to know from a genuine Star Wars nerd, am I onto something here? Does that even make sense? Is that a legitimate question, or am I just kind of talking out my elbow here and I don't really know like a major plot point? Because I'm really into Star Wars, but I've pretty much watched things about it. I haven't been on Reddit threads or gone into deep dives or read a lot of the books. I've only read the Bane series, which I loved, and I want to know more about the dark side. And so this is my question: is can there be a type of Sith who is driven by an emotion that isn't based in hate or rage or fear? Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to the stage. The quick answer is yes. The basic premise of light versus dark is, letting your emotions control you. George Lucas describes it as joy versus pleasure, short-lived pleasure versus long-lasting joy. Mm-hmm. The dark side is a drug that you're addicted to, and then you have to continually up the ante to kind of replenish the feeling of pleasure. And so that can come in multiple shapes and forms. Anakin's love for Padme, his obsession, the inability to let go of her, fear, hatred, anger. Those are all of like the low-hanging fruit of emotions that can control you, but any emotion can really control you. Grief can control you and send you down a dark path. So
definitely that's true. But one of the things I point out in my video is that the anger, hatred, and rage thing is pretty much always the end point. Yeah. So you always will start with something else. It could be joy. In Anakin's case, it was love. He loved Padme. But then that love turns to possession. Well, what if I lose Padme? Or what if someone takes Padme away? Or what if Padme leaves you? And then you start to get anxious, and then you want to control them so that they can't leave, or no one can get in the way. And then he's seeking power because she's going to be with him forever. And then, well, if I can control life and death, then I can rule anything. And then it starts to up the ante, and then before you know it, you're lost. And just like drug addiction, if you've ever had a friend or a family member, maybe they started out because they were sad, or maybe they started out because it was fun. The end result is, they have no teeth and they're all strung out.
And this also goes hand in hand with the most famous explanation for anything that leads to the dark side in all of Star Wars, and I'll tap in Choco to complete it because I don't remember it. But when Yoda says hate leads to anger, fear leads to hate leads to anger leads to suffering, and then suffering leads to the dark side.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. But again, it starts with fear. But there's a lot of times there's another, there's love. You fear losing them, so it turns into fear, and then there's a pipeline that
there was if you remember what Yaddle said, she had an additional chain to add to that.
Oh. Well, but that was like the opposite chain, the chain of light.
But I suppose the main point is that all of this stuff leads to the other, and when Choco says like these are all end points, it can stem from love, grief, or joy. It just depends on how far you let those emotions control you, and how you submit to them, and therefore it leads to the other things. So,
yeah,
good question. Love the Bane series.
Now, as someone who really likes the dark side, what else do you recommend that she checks out?
Plagueis, for sure. I'd also like her to check out Deceived. because that's a really good one in terms of like this kind of relating the Bane trilogy to another Sith who had a similar kind of experience with the dark side.
Yeah, and Bane does have someone that he loves. Read the book.
But yeah, it's funny how I immediately defaulted to Legends. But that's my favorite. That's my favorite. Like Old Republic's my favorite jam. That's my jam. But in terms of canon, I would also recommend Rise of the Red Blade. Shadow of the Sith.
Oh, that's a good one.
There's a lot more, and I'm failing to kind of call them up. But the High Republic series is also a great look into the dark side as well.
Okay, yeah. So, in my video reply, I mentioned Plagueis, of course, James Lucino. Shout out. He's tough to read, but it's worth it in the end. You know, I called out to Steve like you did, Paul S. Kemp. It took me a while to remember the first name Paul. I kept saying Sean Kemp.
The basketball player.
He played for the Seattle Supersonics. He was amazing. Him and Gary Payton together. Woo! That was also my team in NBA Jam. I don't know if you ever played NBA Jam. It was amazing. And I recommended Rise of the Red Blade. And then the other one I recommended was Dark Disciple.
Yeah. That's true. You know, we have a lot more. You know what? Next, I would recommend The Acolyte.
Yeah.
We have so much more in canon about the dark side now than we ever have before. I think, you know, you can't go wrong with either of those recommendations when it comes to the study of the dark side and kind of reconciling with the differences with the Jedi. But essentially, like, you know, the simplest of terms is like the Jedi don't let emotions control them, and the Sith do.
Rhonda with the book says the Sonics were never the same after Kemp and Peyton left. That is facts, and they couldn't keep the franchise together. And then they're like, "I guess we're the Washington Wizards now." And then like, everything just fell apart. But yeah, also seeing Sean Kemp try to do a cartwheel in the dunk contest was one of the best moments in basketball history.
The Sixers,
but
are my jam.
yes.
Phidias says the Jazz. Shout out to Chase, forward into the black. How's it going, Chase?
The Utah Jazz. Okay, you got the mailman. You got Stockton.
May says, I want more pre-episode 1. Have you seen The Acolyte? I'm pretty sure you have. With a name like May.
Also, if you want pre-episode 1, I'm gonna highly recommend checking out Padawan by Kirsten White, Brotherhood by Mike Chen,
Just
as
all the
well
books.
as
Just name it
no,
all.
no, no. No, these are specific books. Sorry, Brotherhood is not pre-episode 1, so remove that. But what's it called? The other one by our favorite author.
Claudia Gray? Master and Apprentice?
Yeah, Master and Apprentice by Claudia
Jeez.
Gray. Absolutely.
That's a book to forget, huh?
Sometimes things just fall out of my brain. It happens.
Shout out to Jay Bird who says, why jazz when you have jizz? Wookiees forever. Two totally unrelated ideas in the same sentence, but I guess. Do Wookiees play a different type of jizz? Don't answer that.
Their hair is too long. It's messy. Anyways,
It's like a freaking... What's that with Cameron Diaz?
there's something about Mary.
Yeah.
Classic.
How's it going, Dom? So there's that question. Is there any other lore subjects that we can cover?
Sorry, I just Ronald with the book says Claudia Gray also writes Jane Austen fan fiction murder mysteries, and I was like, that's the best sentence I've heard all day.
Yeah. Let's see here. Also, okay, we do have some micro lore to discuss. How far are you into the Mask of Fear, the latest book?
I am not far enough. I've had a heck of a past couple of days, so I haven't really had much time. I was hoping that we could cover that book in its entirety and maybe reach out and get Beth on, because I know they've been super interesting. So that makes me not want to jump into it at all just yet. Also, Sam Bray in the chat says, last time I saw you was when you were posting from the hospital. I hope you're well. Yeah, I almost died from COVID back in the day, but I'm doing great. Now. So,
okay, first impressions. I'll only say a couple of words on, because I'm like, what? I'm on like chat. First of all, long ass book. I was on chapter 40, I think, and then I was like, hey, did you finish? We'll talk about it tomorrow. And then like I looked at the chapters and there's like almost 80, and I was like, never mind, I'm not done yet. So I'm at like chapter 60 now, and so like this is, first of all, it's very political. It's very Andor, and I understand why they're dropping this now, right before Andor season 2, because it is line for line
topical.
It is line for line gonna set you up for Andor season 2. And you know, like, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but I won't say any details. This book makes me hate Mon Mothma. But I understand. It's like saying, listen, it's like Lando. I don't agree with it. I don't like it, but I accept it, because like there's certain moments in this book where Mon Mothma, I'm like, oh, you have a point, but I hate you.
So you're definitely further in the book than I am. I'm more like at chapter 15 or something like that. But in this book, you know, again, it's a very political book, right? And so Mon Mothma is trying to do what she needs to do to try and protect the galaxy and to get the right people together so that she can. But that means playing into specific people's interests. That means this thing, which is objectively right. We need justice for this thing here. But that's not a very popular topic. And if we talk about this, then I will lose these people. If I lose those people, then we lose the power in the Senate. And if we lose the power in the Senate, then we can't accomplish anything. And you're like, ah!
Yeah, you get it, but then you're like, no.
She's out of line, but she's right. Hey, what's up, Condi Skywalker? How you doing?
I also want to, express my dread for anyone who is not adept in smoking out or exposing propaganda, to be careful, because again,
oh, I know there's gonna be people who read an early chapter and they're like, see, I told you all this stuff, and you're like, no, the whole point is that's not true. the whole point is that's obviously not true.
Yeah, when the first time I heard it, and I was like, well, wait, that doesn't match with what is written in canon. And then, oh, okay, no, it's definitely prop. So yeah, I think so far the book is very, very heavy, very, very political. But if you're interested in Andor, if you're interested in Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, like, it's really good so far.
I also will say, if you are also paying attention to what's going on in the U.S., you will be shooketh.
Spooky Kid says, for me, Andor didn't get good until Andy Serkis showed up. After that, the story really blocked up for me. It was certainly a slow start. You know, there was a lot of setup that needed to happen in order for you to be kind of fully immersed in Andor's situation. And yeah, it did kind of accelerate. Exponentially. During that part, May says I never finished Andor. I highly recommend you give it at least a shot.
Please do. I know a lot of people that when it was coming out, that it was too slow for them, because it's kind of a slow burn, right? There's these arcs. At the premiere, they showed 3 episodes, and so you got to see the first whole arc, and then you were pumped to keep going forward. But I know people who watched the first 2 episodes, and were like, but you're like, no, the resolution is on the 3rd. This setup, and then, but I have a great feeling about this season because we've already gotten over the first hump, right? We have all the setup, we have the characters joining, you know, all of that stuff that would be the slow part has been done. And so now it's going to be, you know, all killer, no filler, to quote some 41 albums.
I haven't seen Andor or Skeleton Crew, which is funny because I've heard a lot of good stuff, but you know, I've only recently watched the sequels. Jaybird, I may be recalling incorrectly, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you are relatively new to Star Wars? Or at least, like, you've just recently watched the sequels and now you're kind of getting back into the groove of things. Because I will recommend Andor and Skeleton Crew. Those are really, really good shows. I honestly, as a Star Wars fan, I recommend you watch all of the shows. And if it doesn't work for you, that's fine as well.
I will say this, though. Each of these shows are meant to scratch a different itch.
Yes.
So, Skeleton Crew won't scratch the same itch as Andor, and that doesn't scratch the same itch as Ahsoka, right? But they all have their different ups and downs, and they're all enjoyable, you know. But I do think that Andor is one of the best written pieces of Star Wars media out there.
I will proclaim for Choco and I, as lore people, we have several itches. That need to be scratched. And so I love it. I love that we have so many different shows for those different itches.
Yeah. Like, I want stuff that just explores the universe and, like, just doesn't... It's just kind of just out there, hanging out, exploring, not with a real purpose, right? And that's what Skeleton Crew does. I want to find out about the political stuff and, like, the nitty-gritty, and that's what we get in Andor. I want to find out about the Force and how it works, and that's Ahsoka. Mandalorian space is super interesting. What's going on over there? And then you have the Mandalorian. Like, there's just stuff everywhere.
But in terms of, like, the exploration of, like, Skeleton Crew, the whole kind of that itch... In the same vein that I needed Enshrouded to scratch the itch of me just kind of, like, you know, building and just, like, being calculating and just going all in on this one specific thing. The itch that I need scratched from Star Wars immediately extends from Skeleton Crew, but we really need an archaeological spelunking tomb raiding show with Afra. Like, the first time they described the Acolyte, I thought it was going to be the Afra, I thought it was going to be an Afra show. They were talking about, you know, exploring many different places and uncovering artifacts and stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, Afra. I want an Afra show. Because then that's the itch of, like, going to different worlds, looking at different artifacts. Like, even Andor, to some degree, scratched that itch slightly with Luthen's shop, with all those artifacts. But I want to go full bore into artifact hunting and treasure hunting and uncovering the mysteries of the High Republic temples and Old Republic temples and Sith worlds and stuff like that from a lens that is not a Jedi or a Sith, which is why it has to be Afra, you know?
Yeah, no, that would be fascinating. I'm into it. Yeah, I just need heists. Give me a heist or crime. One of the two. Like heist or mystery.
Zane said it just right. And some of us have Star Wars chicken box and itch all over. Jaber says, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, so I've been
That's going to be an overlay, I'm sorry,
member of
sir.
the Dad Squadron.
Hey, shout out to Cal4, friend of the channel. Thank you for being a member of DYAD Squad for 43 months.
Thank you for being a friend.
12,
Golden Girls.
24, 36, 48.
Huh?
Almost 4 years. Almost 4 years now. That's crazy. So Jaber says, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, so I've fallen very behind. I've seen The Mandalorian, though. Interesting. Okay. I've watched The Acolyte. I had to. It had so much negativity around it. Well, I'm glad that worked out for you. Yeah,
Listen,
for sure.
If the chuds hate it, I'ma have it. That's how it. But by the way, Japer, are you also a Marvel fan? Because starting next week, we will also be covering Daredevil.
Yes.
I'm looking.
Born, is that
I'm very, very much looking forward to that.
Is it called Born Again? I don't want to like mistake it for Born Again Christians.
Born Again. Yeah. It is Born Again. Also, random thing that Pep and I have not talked about, but Pep, what are you doing on Thursday?
This Thursday, which has just passed. I'm sorry. Next Thursday,
Yeah.
the 6th. Nothing. Well, of course I'm going to be out there grinding, but unless we have other plans.
I mean, I'm thinking we could do a joint stream for the game Split Fiction.
What was Split Fiction?
Split Fiction is one of the games I've been super excited about for quite a while. Basically, the premise of the story. Also, Patricia's also she and I were nerding out about it when you had to step away while we were talking. But yeah, Split Fiction is a book about I don't know, basically that this mega corporation writers can use this equipment and kind of make what they are imagining for their book a reality that they play through. And it turns out the corporation's kind of evil, and then there's two women who have these different books. One of them is a fantasy book, the other sci-fi book, and they get pushed into the same one. And so it's two people who play together at the same time, and it's through each of these different genres of fantasy and sci-fi. And it's a game.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's the same studio that made It Takes Two, which was also critically acclaimed. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Let's make this like the co-op stream. Because I also want to play Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. And see how the dyad does through that.
Yeah.
Did you look anything up on that one?
I did look it up. It looks fun to try.
Yeah, I mean, like we may end up being mad at each other at the end, but I have confidence in our ability to relay information to each other, and we'll send some like force images, through the force. So that's next Thursday. Gotcha. We'll put it in the calendar. Cal says, oh my god, can I be on for Daredevil? That's Tuesday, right?
Yeah. I believe so, but I mean, I don't know when we're gonna talk about it. But yeah, Cal, you're welcome.
I was thinking of, we're doing reactions to it.
Oh yeah. Come on for that. Now I need to figure out when it comes out. Chase says there are no games besides Monster Hunter Wilds. Sorry. You know, the Monster Hunter.
I used to play Monster Hunter.
I don't know. I would like. I don't know.
What was
It just hasn't appealed to me personally, but.
What was the game that I played? I actually played it religiously. I love, and I think you, if you gave it a little bit more of a chance, you'd get into it because there's just something cathartic about deconstructing monsters in on a combat level. Like, it's not just fighting big monsters, but like, you know, you take off their armor, like you cut off their tails or disable their legs. Like it is truly tactical combat against, like, this is like an evolution of basically, you know, Shadow of the Guardian or something.
Shadow of the Colossus.
Shadow of the Colossus. So there's a lot of tactics involved in fighting these monsters. I have a amazing clip that I want to try to find when I was playing Monster Hunter World, I think it was, where it was the four of us, and it was a huge kind of like Tyrannosaurus Rex monster, and we had been, you know, like bombarding it with like arrows, swords, and all of our weapons, and it got so wounded it went back to its lair to kind of like recuperate, and we had to chase it and stuff. So we found it, and it was sleeping. So I was like, perfect, nobody move. So we took out our explosive barrels and we all put it right by the nose while it was sleeping. We had like 6 barrels. and then I backed up and I did my power shot with the bow into the barrels, and it went boom, 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 boom. And then the victory music played. Da, 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 da. It's like, oh my gosh, that was, the catharsis is real. I think you should really give it a shot.
So where I'm at is I'm like, I don't want that to be the game.
What do you mean?
Like, I know. I don't know how else to explain it. Like that would be cool if I was playing like a narrative game with a bunch of stuff, and then the boss was this monster that we hunt. But like that being the game, I don't know. It just, like I said, it doesn't appeal to me. But I would be okay to give it a shot. Let's see here now. I will say, Chase says, let me know if you guys want to hunt. I will say is there's a game coming out called Jump Ship that I explicitly want to play with us, with Cal, and with Chase.
What's the elevator pitch for Jump Ship?
Jump Ship is a spaceship game. So basically, you have it's a 4-player co-op, right? So there's a spaceship, you have one person piloting it, and you do stuff. So the other people may have to run around and fix things. They may run around and operate turrets. You'll come up to an enemy ship, and we'll use our like jump jets to jump off and shoot hooks and pull us in so that we can board that ship and take it over like freaking pirates. And all this, sort of stuff.
Less.
It looks badass.
That sounds lovely. I would love to play that. When is that coming out?
Cal says it's the Nile game we deserve. Absolutely.
So now we just have to inherit some characters. I'll be Marchion Rowe.
And I'll be Panada. That's how he talks to me.
Chase can be Lorna D. Cal can be, what's that monkey dude in the robot suit? Okay, let's move on to Lucasfilm. So, I mean, essentially what we're going to be talking about now is just the other side of what we were talking about with Kathleen Kennedy's reports of being forced out or retired, to which she came out in an interview saying she's not. No, they're still talking about their successors. So what I'd like to ask the chat is, who do you guys think? And try not to think too, like, overthink it. Try not to bog your brain with like names of like famed producers and stuff. Just like think of people who you think like I'll throw one out there, Warwick Davis. You know, think of people who you think understand Star Wars, would be able to take the reins and run with it, and you know, kind of do what Kathy has done for the last 13 years, and that is kind of encourage experimentation, encourage telling new stories and taking risks.
Mm-hmm. Also, shout out to Drake Miles in the chat. Love you too, bro. So, who do you got on deck? I mean, I think the obvious one that we should start with is Dave Filoni, right? He's the kind of heir apparent, but I know people for years have been saying, "Oh, he should run things." But again, you can't just go from working on a show to being president of the company. There's a gradient that needs to happen, right? But he's been doing that. You know what I mean? Like, so, and he talks about this as soon as, you know, Kathleen came in. She kind of took him under his wing, has been his mentor, and said, "What do you want to do?" So they start out by giving him his own show. They start out by teaming him up with, you know, people like Rian Johnson to learn behind the scenes, and then with Jon Favreau. Now he can direct live action, and then now he's been able to produce shows, and then work, you know, a step above with like the Bad Batch and having, you know, people underneath him. And then he's just slowly been working on this. Now he's gonna have a movie under his belt soon, and he's directly under her now. So that's a long process. So the people who's been saying he should take over for years and years, it would have been a bad idea then. However, do we really want him to step out of the creative role? That's the real question, right? Because if you're the president of the company, your job, again, it's 90% administrative, 10% creative. Do we really want Dave out of the creative seat? What do you guys think?
I mean, preliminarily, I'll say no. I think he should remain chief creative. Like, that is the highest position on the creative side. You know, everything goes through him creatively. I would want the same for Favreau as well. But I think Favreau, I'm not sure. I think Favreau thrives in creative as well. You know, he likes to write these stories. You know, the whole pitch for Mandalorian was what he was writing, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, he just loves Mandalorians, you know. I love the story of him and Dave Filoni's like first meeting up together, because he was like, "Hey, I'm working on this Iron Man stuff," and then Dave's like, "I'm working on this Clone Wars stuff." He's like, "All right, I'll show you Iron Man if you show me Clone Wars," and then that's how they became friends, and you know, that's how Jon Favreau got the voice of Mandalorian in Clone Wars. So, I just love that kind of spark. But I personally agree. I think that I want to say Carrie Hart.
Yeah, she's the head of the story group, right?
That's Carrie.
She used to be.
Carrie Hart used to be, yeah.
Yeah, I would be so down for that. May says, what happened when George Lucas come back? Listen, if you guys can't get over Kathleen Kennedy retiring at 71, how are you going to get over George Lucas coming back at 80? He's not coming back. He is so over it. He just wants to sit on his porch chair and say, "Get off my lawn."
Tommy in the chat says, my selfish answer is Tony Gilroy. Which is
I like
it's
him
funny
more as
because
like a writer and a director.
well, what's interesting about Tony Gilroy is that's like when you have a total outsider come in and you're like, we're going out to pick someone up, and that might be an interesting choice because again, he's film first and not necessarily Star Wars first, and you could take that or leave it for better or worse. I sometimes I wonder if being too plugged in might serve as a negative for some people. I don't know.
Ooh, you know, if we're naming people that are just kind of like really good at like directing and show like and writing, she doesn't have a lot of producership credits, but she's a fantastic director. And we're just throwing this name out there. I would love if Bryce Dallas Howard became the president of Lucasfilm.
Oh yeah, you know,
I'm just
very
imagining all
talented.
the great things that she would, all the great stories that she would greenlight. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm already a fan of that. Literally grew up in the movie industry, and I imagine has a deep understanding. Talks about having memories of hanging out with her dad, George Lucas, and Kurosawa, which is crazy.
God,
A Plus Hero Report says he's busy making a new trilogy, but Simon Kinberg, he shaped the X-Men universe for a while.
I mean, Simon Kinberg he's written hundreds of movies. He's a Hollywood writer. I don't know, you know, his chops in terms of like Star Wars, but I don't think he's writing a trilogy, but you know, that could be cool.
Yeah, I mean, Simon Kinberg, if I'm not
Someone said-
mistaken, he worked on Rebels like for its entire run, right?
I believe
Crazy.
so. Maybe after season 1. Either that or the whole run.
Yeah, Star Wars Rebels, he EP'd it for 71 episodes. So, yeah, he's been in it. Now, he has some lows, you know, in there, but also some highs and some things that, you know, we just don't really think about often, right?
Well, when you just like with Kathleen Kennedy, when you work as much as these people do, you'll have hits and misses no matter what.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, also, you have to remember, like, being a producer or an executive producer, whether or not you like the project is not necessarily a reflection on how well someone EP'd for the project, you know?
I mean, for all intents and purposes, they could have like flop after flop, but they were on budget and they curated some
Met the right
wonderful
people
vendor relations and, you know, had a fantastic crew and everything about
Had a great time shooting it.
everything about their shoot was spectacular, but the movie flopped. So I mean,
Well, actually, I feel like that was what was going on with Madam Web, the movie, because like whenever there was commercials or stuff, it was always the girls just like having fun or like looking good. You know what I mean? They didn't talk about the movie, they didn't show the movie. It was just like them walking around.
yeah. Let's see here. I want Dave where he is, and Carrie Beck should take the president job. Brad Rao would be another possibility that I don't know if he has the experience yet.
Okay.
Cal says Leslie Headland is my pick. She understands the good from Legends and the magic of canon. Boy, would that be a freaking roller coaster override in terms of a news cycle.
Yeah, I would love to hear the Chud reaction to that. That'd be pretty funny.
Oh, you know what it would be. if they named Leslie Headland the new president, they'd be like, "I'm officially done with Star Wars.
And I would
Star
say,
Wars
thank
is
you.
dead." And
Thank
then the
you.
next week, they're still watching Star Wars, and they're still, it's these guys can never be done with Star Wars because it pays their bills. At least hating on it pays their bills.
Phineas McCormick says the greatest choice would be Spielberg. But
He's
that isn't
also
happening for
old
a
as hell, too.
plethora of reasons. He's way up there in age. I think it's really funny how all of these writers and stuff, all these famous directors, they all came up together. So like Spielberg was one of the people that George Lucas was sending the script for A New Hope to. Like he would meet with him, with Coppola, with with all these like really high end people. Spielberg would be interesting. I feel like he's so prolific that he doesn't have the sauce.
My selfish choice is Sam Witwer. I mean, he knows his stuff, but he's an actor.
So I'm saying put Sam Witwer in the story group.
Yeah.
Put him in the story group. Put me in the story group. God damn.
No, okay. I don't care who is the president. Just make us part of the story group. Because then we wouldn't have say over the stories being told, but we would be at on the vanguard of continuity.
Yeah.
And when someone approaches the story group and they're like, we need a prodigious Jedi who has a very
Quinlan Voss.
well, hold on. We need a very prodigious Jedi that comes from a very harrowed lineage, and has a lot to prove because of it. And I'll be like, I think Satil Shan would work. would work. I'd be pushing my shit. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be pushing my favorite people. If I were in the story group and Filoni was like developing another animated show, I'd be like, hey, is there anything continuity wise with that that we can kind of play in a sandbox of, like Quinlan Voss? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Quinlan Voss.
Yeah. And by the way, largely, if for anyone who doesn't know, that's what the story group does. Someone will come in and say, I want to tell a heist story, and have Lando be part of it. How can we do this? And it'd be like, okay, well, Lando is available from this year to this year, and who do you want me to go up against with? Zerker Corp. And you're like, well, that wouldn't work because they manage all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Basically, the gods of continuity, essentially.
Yeah.
Craig McGoodwin says we need a Kelleran Beck. Ahmed Best can become the bomb bad president. Go for it.
Yeah. Put him in charge.
Here's my fun pick. Here's my fun pick for president. Christina Ariel. Just make her president. Do it. Claudia Gray. Make it happen. Which brings me to another kind of like side question, sidebar. If you guys were in the story group, what would be the first thing that you suggest to the next storyteller who asks, I want to tell the story after the rise of Skywalker that involves the resurgence of the Sith? I know that's low-hanging fruit. We need to go get past the Sith. But I'm wondering if you guys can come up with a really, really good narrative justification for Sith to come back post Rise of Skywalker. It doesn't have to be 5 years, 10 years. It could be 50 years. But think about it. If you were in the story group, how would you make that work? Because this goes in line with the other thing that we can kind of talk about briefly is Sean Levy's Ryan Gosling movie, in which Kathleen Kennedy revealed that it would be 5 years after the rise of Skywalker, and there could be potential for sequel characters to appear. There's no telling who, but it is quite chronologically, adjacent to the rise of Skywalker. So there's a sandbox there to play with. May says Snoke clone wakes up. What am I doing here?
Eye of Webbish Bog, a Star Wars story.
Let's go. Is Eye of Webbish Bog the protagonist?
Yes. Half.
Episode one is just Vader showing up. What do you want? I'm sitting here napping.
I think I already have my pitch. It's something I believe I've said before, but you have yours?
Yes, it goes in line with what I was writing with Echoes of the Past, but I'll kind of deviate slightly to what I was essentially wanting to do as part of the narrative of Echoes, which was basically a story that revolves around civilizations in wild space that represent what the Jedi and Sith knew of the Force in antiquity, but are still thriving today in the present time. So we would basically be following the Ashla and the Bogan tribes, but contemporary. They're not like in ancient times. They're the basis for what the Bendu says is like Ashla. The Jedi use Ashla, the Sith use Bogan, and like they're the foundation for that concept. But they still exist. It's like going into wild space and finding out that the Maxians still exist, and
yeah,
the Zepho are still alive. So it's kind of like I want to tell a story of the Ashla and the Bogan. They don't know who the Jedi are. They don't know who the Sith are. And someone like finds them and they're like, do you know the Jedi? He's like, no, we have our own things. And like they use the Force differently. I kind of want to like do a mix of like The Last Airbender and like kind of like a very primitive understanding of the Force. They use it for like to control water and fire, and it's very, very different. Still using the Force, but the concepts is kind of antiquated in nature, but contemporary in narrative.
Okay, I like it. I like it. Let's see. Quake McGuinn says, I'd actually say that after Rise of Skywalker, the Sith would return as a result of Darth Momin assimilating into a new body, like he did into the Vader comics, and finding a new apprentice. That could be interesting. I mean, someone puts on his helmet, starts building stuff uncontrollably. Yeah, that could definitely be a thing. Phineas says, I would say a person discovers a Sith holocron and becomes a student of it, which would be a really good way to do it. Also, it might be interesting if it was the opposite, like someone finds a holocron and they mean well, they're a good person, and they start following this person's journey through the Force, but the person they're following was someone who fell to the dark side. So as they go through this holocron, and they start seeking more and more power and then like end up falling, that would be really cool. May says, isolated Sith world from the early Sith Empire still exists, but they're not aware of the recent events of Bane, Rule of Two, etc. Kind of like the world from the Skeleton Crew. Yeah, and that was the thing in Legends. There was a whole lost tribe of the Sith where this group got crash landed on a planet, and that planet was not advanced enough, and so the Sith they just had to live on that planet and integrated with the people. They started to rule them and all this stuff, and then eventually got introduced back into the rest of the galaxy. So that was a concept from Legends, and that would definitely be a way to do it.
Question: is Nathema canon?
No.
Because that would be really interesting. Kind of exploring the history, like someone finds Anathema and they find a world devoid of the Force. And through their investigation, they find that a ritual had taken place and the planet had been siphoned, and it leads to them finding the Emperor, but like obviously not as powerful as Vitiate. Just, you know, something to bring Vitiate, Valkorion, or Tenebrae into the fold narratively and kind of tell that story. Because the future is a huge sandbox to play in when it comes to like reintroducing ancient ways and different characters.
Yeah, I mean, they can even go with the Darth Crate thing where he's been in stasis or something and pops out and is like, "Hey, I'm back." But also, it would just be interesting to have someone that has like really primitive Sith ideology, and they're in this modern world, kind of like, kind of like an Encino Man, but with the Sith.
Didn't the Sith crash land on Korriban in Legends, and Darth Bane was the only one who survived that crash? No, so in Legends, the first Jedi to fall to the dark side were exiled. And so they took a long journey and happened upon Korriban. And they started, you know, assimilating their dark side teachings with the Sithari that lived there. Eventually, they assimilated them all and kind of like created the Sith world of Korriban. But they weren't Sith. They were, for all intents and purposes in Legends, Dark Jedi. Like, they were fallen Jedi. They were creating their own ideology based on the dark side. Bane comes like 5,000 years later. You know, when the Jedi and the Sith are warring pretty heavily. And, well, I don't want to spoil the book, but the books. But that's when Darth Bane comes.
Yeah. Oh, you know, we could also do a thing where you have the people of Iskat from Rise of the Red Blade, and you can have, you know, one of them kind of branch off and have that be their actual, you know, ancestry. You know, this is the actual Sith race. That's definitely a way you could go. But my pitch is the Sith failsafe. Right, is part of the Sith Eternal, you know, higher ups knew that Palpatine was weak. They knew that Vader was gone. They knew that there was no heir to the Sith, and so they had a contingency plan that was outside of everything and outside of the rule of two, right? Because that served a specific purpose. So they would have a place where they take their young who are Force sensitive, who aren't suitable to serve as Palpatine bodies, and try to educate them in the ways of the Sith and make them hate the Jedi and all this stuff. And so you could have someone where they truly believe that they are the heir to the Sith, but they practice the teachings of all of the Sith. They don't have a specific master. They're not a specific apprentice, and they just have to kind of find their way. And then at the end, you know, I'm almost thinking like in the show that we just watched, Pantheon, where they have the kid who's the clone, and then they're like, "Well, we served you, boss." You know, have that sort of situation where once they come of age, he's like, "What do I do?" And they're like, "You tell us." you are the Sith, and have that person start to tear their way through the galaxy.
That's cool. I also loved how the music that's playing right now just freaking elevated that pitch to a whole new level. Like you were talking about all of the dark stuff, and it was like, ning, 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 ning. I was like, dang. It was like a trailer.
By the way, season 2 of Pantheon just came to Netflix. So,
Yay! We can watch it.
So
it's in
you
its
definitely
entirety.
watch it. I might have to recheck out a couple episodes to see what it's like without big chunks of it cut out. But
Oh yeah, like I'm wondering if there's a part where it's like where what's her name? What's the character's name?
I don't remember her name.
Gosh. Maddie?
Yeah, it was Maddie.
Like in the end, she's like, "Let me explain things clearly to you." And then like freaking filler music. I was like, "I'm missing this. What's going on?"
Yeah, so this is kind of a continuation of a conversation from like last month or maybe 2 months now. But this show is amazing. It's called Pantheon. It's on Netflix, but only season 1 was on Netflix for the longest time. And one of the big problems is that this show has popular music in it. So there's a scene where the Gorillaz starts playing, or there's a scene where, you know, just different popular music. And so season 2 was not available anywhere. And except on YouTube, someone just uploaded it to YouTube, which means YouTube catches popular music, so they had to just cut those pieces out, and so there are big chunks just missing.
I do want to share really quickly this dope wallpaper.
Hey, all right, 2 queens.
I also had an additional pitch. As we run out of music, or is it just a quiet track? It's a quiet track. I want to see an X-Men story.
Mustard on that beat. An X-Men story? What?
Yes. You know how...
X-Men in Star Wars.
Not X-Men in Star Wars, the Jedi as the X-Men. Now, hear me out. The whole premise behind Kathleen Kennedy's kind of like pitch on New Jedi Order is... Does the galaxy need the Jedi? How does the galaxy think of the Jedi during this time? I want a story where a large majority of the good deeds and the legends of the Jedi was largely forgotten and lost throughout all of the wars that happened throughout the Republic Civil War, throughout the Resistance and the First Order War. The only thing that survived is, you know, the people who know Rey, the ancient Jedi texts, the smattering of Jedi that are survived up until this point. But I want the galaxy to remain fearful. I want to see a story where the Jedi are outcasts and
Jedi Outcast, great series.
they are outcast and ostracized, and the fear of the Force has a resurgence, right? You know how like before the Jedi were even like this large monolith in the eyes of the galaxy, having a child with Force sensitive powers was largely dangerous and kind of like this unknown that people feared. So before the Jedi had kind of proliferated and created this anti-stigma of the Force, and you know, making it it's an honor. I want to see the story of the galaxy that fears people who have these abilities.
Okay. What's funny is, I mean, obviously we're a dyad, but exactly what you are explaining right now is what I'm betting any amount of money is going to be the story of the new Avatar series, Seven Havens.
Okay.
Right? Because people are like, oh, it's Korra destroyed the world, Korra destroyed the world. No. Being the Avatar is marking someone as the world's destroyer, not savior. My bet is that what they're looking at is, I'll bet any amount of money that some type of spirit monster rose up and started causing a cataclysm, And people were like, quote, Korra opened the portals. So what she did ultimately caused this. And then they go, and what about Aang? You know, he dipped out for 100 years while the whole world got taken over by the freaking Fire Nation, which they shouldn't even be able to take over because Roku didn't do what he was supposed to do because he couldn't. And I feel like they're gonna look at the past actions of the Avatar and say being the Avatar is the cause of the problems that we have, and that's what needs to end.
Batosai in the chat is saying, like Amon in book 1 of Korra, Fear of the Benders. That's basically it. I mean, I attribute it because I grew up on the X-Men, but like essentially like a world that's fearful of all Force users. And given statistics, the galaxy largely outnumbers Force users 1 million to 1. So, like,
have you tried not being a Force user?
Because, like, I imagine, like, this kid just, like, in drab clothing, just trying to survive, grabs an apple with the Force, and, like, he's a thief. Then they're like, thief! And he's like, oh, he's a monster, he can use the Force! Just something of that. It could be
Riff raff, street rat,
Force ghosts.
If only they'd look closer, would they see a Jedi? No siree. No, I also Batosai. Glad to see another Korra fan. Love Legend of Korra. Good stuff. That would be a really good. That'd be good to watch. But I will say you can actually put that in most places because under the Empire, it was also a death mark that people were afraid of. But you're very much giving me Gara vibes or
Yeah, no, I essentially don't want it to be an extrinsic motivator. I want it to be intrinsic to people's basically fear of the unknown. Like, it's been 50 years since the Empire, 50 years since the First Order, and since we've had any
50 years since the Empire.
Since we've had any notion of like a Jedi or Force user collective, right? And people have like, it's been a generation. So people grew up. They didn't grow up with stories of the Jedi. So a couple of generations removed, you have people who are still relatively new to Force users. And then you'll have the criminals that are creating negative stigmas using the Force in negative ways. So.
It also kind of makes me think of like what's it called, Force Collector, where the kid discovers he's Force sensitive, but he can't control it, and he touches objects, and has extremely strong psychometry, but can't control it, to where it like takes over. And how scary that would be, and he just like knows things, and people are like, what's wrong with that guy? Yeah, that'd be cool.
I am of the idea of a definitive ending with 9, but if it must continue, I would like something related to interpretation of the past.
That's 12.
Oh, I went backwards on that one. Even that, the backwards would be 8.
I honestly don't think that the new movies that are coming out are going to be part of the Skywalker saga. So I don't think they'll be part. I think we're done with 9, and this is going to be a separate thing.
Yeah, this is something that we're pitching outside of like the saga. Because like and this is me kind of tooting my own horn, I can create an entirely different saga with the Ashla and Bogan narrative that I've pitched.
But you know what? Also, I want give me my own Star Wars Harry Potter. Like, give me a group of kids inside of the Jedi, and they're just navigating becoming Jedi and going to their classes and having school-age kid drama and stuff,
Oh my gosh, and they can have like a Triforce tournament where the Yakom sends a couple of students to Coruscant, and you have what's it called, the Dagoyan Master sent students, and like it's whole competition with the Force, and then you have a really really dark and mysterious students show up from a place called Korriban. More like Morban.
More like Morban. We give us a My Hero Academia, but in Star Wars, and maybe one of them is secretly a Sith, just kind of like how Xana infiltrated the temple, or comes from a dark place, and you have to root out who they are, and maybe they changed their mind, or whatnot. Of course, it's the love interest that you never expected.
Let's go on to the extras. I do want to discuss really quickly Sean Levy's movie. It's 5 years after the Rise of Skywalker. Potentially, a sequel characters could show up. What do we think this is?
Potentially they could show up, but Sean Levy definitely talked about wanting to be separate, wanting to have it be its own thing where he's not constrained, which of course being by nature being 5 years out makes that true. But
well, just like I said with the Star Wars universe in general, things don't need to narratively be connected for characters to exist, right?
Yeah.
So like, for example, the Acolyte, we're not getting a season 2, but those characters are canon, so those characters could show up in another show. So I'm thinking potentially Sean Levy's movie is something entirely removed from the saga, but I don't know, we see Claude or Rose Tico or some people from the sequels that are just kind of living life,
kind of tossed out there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, could very well be something. Yeah, well, give me something with small stakes, right? I don't want the whole galaxy to be
just
at
small slices and slabs of Wagyu A5.
Yeah. so I mean, like I said before, I want a heist. I want a heist movie, and there is one of the last books to come out from the Legends continuity is a book called Scoundrels by Timothy Zahn, and it was a heist thing, and they were stealing something, and like the Black Sun cartel got involved, and then there was like Imperials. It had a surprise ending that was super dope. You could definitely do something like that where it's a heist where they're trying to. I was going to say rob Canto Bight, but that happens in Star Wars Outlaws. But yeah, have someone trying to break into the old Jedi Temple to look for something, and having to navigate through there, and we could get a history lesson on certain things and run into certain characters. Yeah, give me a heist where we can toss in a few characters, and maybe you run into John Boyega, who's I don't know. I just want a heist. I want a heist movie. And I want more John Boyega.
I know we're getting a Mandalorian and Grogu movie, but I really think we should devote an entire movie on the Mandalorians in general.
Yeah.
The Mandalorians as a culture, their history. Maybe Sean Levy's movie is about the Mandalorians, right? And it's not about Din, it's not about Bo-Katan, but it's about a group of Mandalorians who are trying to learn about their past. And
got it. I got my actual pitch.
We can go ahead. I was just spitballing.
Okay, my actual pitch will be this, and it's heavily inspired off of Jason Solo, but give me a Force user who is someone who is strong in the Force, who doesn't know where they fit in, and they're researching cultures that use the Force, and traveling and trying to find them and find any type of Force user, any type of manuscript, any type of culture related to the Force, and we just go with them on that journey. And they may learn some interesting techniques and some interesting philosophies, and they have to figure out where they fit in. And then ultimately, at the end, they join the Jedi.
Yeah. So good.
Batosai says, I'm starting my reading journey in Legends, currently 30% into Dark Force Rising. I'm curious to see what the ideas or concepts that I can find that interest me, discover where the limits are. Yeah, so Dark Force Rising is, okay, so you're the second book in there, and you're at the very beginning of it, so I'm not going to say anything. Never mind.
I've seen a lot of movies and anime, and you realize the big structured journey is already told, and there's not much beyond it. I mean, just look at the Bible. It is in individual stories that originality and more stories can be told. Yeah, all in the same universe, too. Like, I imagine, there's some stories to be told about, like Choco said, smugglers. First of all, I watched a clip with I forget what his name is, but he's on one of those popular like nerd channels. He's a GM. He's a DM. He was talking to Matt Mercer, and he was like, why are all the elves posh and why are all orcs like kind of like, what is he called? What's it called that? I forget the accent he uses, but he's like, wouldn't it be interesting if like we had an orc who's like, we must destroy the wall, and then like an elf that's like, listen, I just want to do this, right? And then like we can go see the Undying Lands, you know what I mean? And I was wondering like, why are all smugglers in Star Wars Matthew McConaughey? Why don't we have a smuggler that is like exactly like that, like a Jason Statham type? It's like, listen, I'm your smuggler. That's what I do.
Yeah. Was it Brandon Lee Mulligan who said that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Brendan.
Okay. I mean, that and that's the thing. That's the thing, especially when it comes to writing. I've been reading a lot of books on writing. When stories first come out, they exist in a genre, and they have all the tropes of that genre. But as we grow and as we, as writing, like, stories sit on the shoulders of other stories. You can't tell the same thing over and over again and expect people to love it just as much. So they start introducing other genres within the subgenre. So we get stories, and that's how you can kind of play around with them. And you're absolutely right. We need a lot more of that, And yeah, it is weird how everyone took, kind of Tolkien's version of how things are and expanded on there. There's also a little bit of racism in that as well. But yeah, we do need to mix it up. I would love to see something where you have you could have a posh set of thieves or something. There's a lot that you can do.
Yeah, which
Gibber says Footloose, but Star Wars.
Which brings me to wanting a Lord of the Rings story, but in like ancient Jedi times. Just the regular swords.
I've got my lightsaber and my blaster. And my blaster.
Ancient times. Ancient times, before the lightsaber.
Okay. Yeah.
It would be a Dawn of the Jedi type of story.
My proto saber. my regular saber that I mashed a kyber crystal into the side of, and it works for some reason. I don't know.
I mean, that would be an interesting kind of jumping off point to introduce an Abeloth type of character, not Abeloth. Don't take what I just said and run with it, guys. I just want like a Sauron type of like evil villain figure, and then I want like all of the like Force users to band together to like fulfill this epic quest to defeat them. And it's not just kind of like a lightsaber fight, you know. It's like they have to fight through a whole bunch of different things. Like it is literally just a quest, basically. We'll do Clash of the Titans meets Lord of the Rings meets Star Wars.
Also, give us the yub nubbening, all right?
The Sith
Bunch of
Ring.
stormtroopers, and they're trapped on Endor, and they need to evac, but they have to survive the night in order to do it, and everything in the night wants to kill them, mostly Ewoks. and it's a horror film.
I will say, the pitch that truly interests me the most out of what we've discussed is actually your Harry Potter one. I really do want a Jedi youngling story where they're just learning how to use the Force, navigating the social dynamics of the clans and the creche.
Yeah.
And their
And
masters.
they play Jedi Ball. they play Hut Ball or something.
Gimli, no mortal blaster can destroy it. What's good, fellas? Do you think Quinlan Vos will make a return to Star Wars soon? Yes.
Always.
In our hearts. I'm always on Quinlan watch. Same thing with Kells. What's her at on TikTok?
Discount Sansa Stark, is it still? I don't know. It changes
Yeah.
from time to time.
But we're always on Quinlan watch, and every single project that comes out, we're like, oh, Quinlan Vos could show up. And quite frankly, narratively and chronologically, he could in all of those projects that we are on watch for. He can even, like, without a canon death, he can even show up in the Sean Levy movie for all I care. Honestly, he's just like an 80-year-old fucking kid.
He's just a super guy. They're like, he's just an old guy with a stripe on his nose, and you're like, yeah, yeah, we did it, guys.
It's just like, even in like New Jedi Order, you know, Rey finds this old Jedi text, right, and it's like missing a few pieces, and it's kind of like it's been erased or like smudged away through wear and tear, and like she has to go and find someone who can glean something from it. And Quinlan Vosh's old man, give it to me and let me touch it. Not let me touch it. I mean, hand me the book. And then that's what we get of Quinlan Vos. He just touches the words in this.
I mean, listen. He's part of my heist movie. You know, they need to find out where this came from, and they find this old guy who's like, he knows everything. He'll recognize it.
Oh, if they need to know like someone's kind of like patrolling patterns, you know, they send him into like a cantina that he frequents, and he shakes his hand. He's like, "Hi, name's Steve," and then he touches him. He's like, oh, he goes through here at this time and frequents this bar at this point. You have a 10-minute window.
Give me the bear, but it's young Dexter Jetster.
Oh man, there's a lot. I mean, honestly, Star Wars is kind of in a position to just be whatever it needs to be at any given point in time.
Yeah.
The only thing that I will not want it to ever be is a Zack Snyder movie. As much as that
slow motion,
as much as that makes sense with the amount of God complex Zack Snyder has, it could work out. I just don't want to see it. I don't.
I mean, listen, he had a pitch. He turned that pitch into Rebel Moon, and it was terrible. So.
As we wrap things up, I do want to participate in Choco's prompt as Keanu Reeves. So, if you could kindly prompt me.
All right. And by the way, so my prompt just for anyone who doesn't know, was, because we have upcoming Andor Season 2, I asked people to give me their best rendition of Luthen's speech in Season 1. And so we'll do that. And I'm waiting because I got another one this morning. And so if we get enough, next week we'll announce a winner and send them something.
Yeah, I'm just doing it for fun.
Yeah. But yeah. What do you sacrifice?
Calm. Kindness. Kinship. Love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I've made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight. They've set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearned to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I looked down, there was no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. And the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Whoa. Everything. I'm the one.
All right. I almost want to hear I feel like a Christopher Walken version or but we don't have to do that now. We can do that.
I mean, let me give a few words a shot. Calm. Kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chances at inner peace. I've made up my mind I've made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago, from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do.
Finish a William Shatner version would be great.
Yeah, you give William. Continue with the William Shatner. Give it your best shot.
No.
My anger, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight. I'll finish this with Nicolas Cage, and then we can wrap things up.
And also, like, I think a Jeff Goldblum version, or the classics, Patrick Warburton.
They've set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, or by the time I looked down, there was no longer any ground beneath my feet.
All right, now Yoda.
My sacrifice, what is? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. My decency I burn for someone else's future. Life to make a sunrise I burn that I know I'll never see.
I just know that with Yoda, it would end with everything is my sacrifice. What is my sacrifice?
Qui-Gon. And the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Hello there.
Let's see. One with the voice of Mr. Plish. I can't.
Mr.
I
Filch?
can't read. Oh.
Mr. Filch from Harry Potter?
Ah, okay. Literally, I can only see this in our projected screen, and so it's small and like crappy looking. So I couldn't read those letters next to each other. But yeah, I think that about wraps everything up.
Really quickly. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I want to, because I am working on a Jeff Goldblum, but he's a tough one to crack. Because it's always just being like whimsical. It's like, oh, calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given it all. Given it all. Anyways, guys, that'll do it for this episode of DYAD in the Force 208. I hope you guys had a blast as much as we have. As always, when it's a good conversation, it goes on and on and on, and we can do this all day. And we have done it for 4, 5, 6 years now. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years now. But remember, Kathleen Kennedy is not retiring. At least not anytime soon. She still has a couple of movies to produce. They will be announcing their succession, though. So you can expect that, in her words, a month or a year out from now. But even when they announce it, she's still going to be on to help them make the transition. So I'd give it another 3 or 4 years before there is a definitive retirement made. And also, I'd give it until they actually announce it. So... let's see. Our next stream is next week with. Are we gonna do offline reactions to Daredevil or watch party?
I mean, well, I think we'll have to play that by ear. We'll talk about it soon. Also, Talon Card.
Oh, but there's no Master James Kenobi.
Yeah.
I smell Satil Shan.
Oh no.
Yeah, deploy the likes, guys. What do you mean? I smell her all day. That's not a no. That's a. Yes, deploy the likes. Like the stream, guys, if you haven't already. Tap that bell and subscribe if you aren't subscribed. We'll see you guys next week for Daredevil Born Again with our guest and DYAD in the Force contributor, Cal Forger. But that's it. On to the next one.
For Light for Life.
We are all calm, kindness, kinship, love. We are all everything.
And may Kathleen Kennedy not go anywhere.
See you guys.
Please check your sources.